The Development Bank of Southern Africa held its first annual Infrastructure Development Exchange last Thursday. The exchange focused on building on their primary role to promote economic development and growth, human resource development and institutional capacity building in South Africa and on the wider African continent. Mainly, the exchange elaborated on the infrastructure currently ailing some municipalities, as well as incidents of gas explosions in parts of Gauteng and the floods in KwaZulu Natal. To chat some more on these issues and more, we're now joined by Chuene Ramphele, who is the Group Executive at the Infrastructure Delivery Division at DBSA, and he joins us via our video link. Chuene, thank you so much for joining us here on SABC News. Of course, we understand that just last week you held your first annual Infrastructure Development Exchange. What prompted this as DBSA? Why did you feel the need to have this sort of conference?
Thank you so much for hosting us. Let me preamble by saying that what prompted us to actually venture into this approach was that as you look at the current environment in our country, I think the South Africans has lost confidence in development institutions, or what you call the SOEs. And we thought it's important that we also begin to pull the DBSA narrative into the picture, because if you look at the DBSA, South Africa should really be proud of having one of the organizations that is well run, that is basically well governed. If you realize, you'll realize that in 2021, it was the only institution that achieved clean audit. It is the most efficient and effective institution that I think we wanted to also communicate this particular message, that most South Africans should not despair. In DBSA, they should also then be in a position to find the excellence that is currently taking place there. So the purpose solely was also to then share with the media, because we're saying it's important to inform, inspire, and educate the nation about the work that we do, especially around economic development, as you already outlined.
Yeah.
And we were just unpacking what DBSA does in that particular respect and the achievements that we've made.
And, when it comes to the actual day and the conference, this exchange that took place last week, what would you say stood out for DBSA when it comes to economic, or rather infrastructure development, and, that would ultimately drive service delivery?
One thing for sure, which I think people will have interest in, is the key question around how, as the DBSA, we are poised to support local government. Yeah. And as you know, that local government is a space where most of service delivery issues take place. As we call it, the local government is at the core phase. We wanted to also communicate the issue of saying we as the DBSA have crafted an approach of an integrated local government support program, but mainly anchoring it on what we call, a partner district. In a partner district, they were focusing particularly on critical infrastructure investment to support economic transformation. So we're looking at things like the wastewater treatment plants, looking at bulk infrastructure, looking at our support on the roads. But further, we also looking at saying we want to also, indicate that as the DBSA, we thought we should also then begin to support municipalities with what we call front loading of grants, and making sure that if they're going to be receiving grants over a particular period, maybe it is important for us to then bring that forward and fund that as DBSA to tackle the infrastructure challenges that they may be faced with at that point in time. Especially those infrastructure directed for service delivery.
And of course, that is ultimately very important for our country, because that's where you feel the impact of what government is actually doing. But moving on to economic development and the role that you play as a DBSA, how important is your role as DBSA for economic development in this country?
Very important, and I think that is at the core center of why we really, if you look at our mandate, particularly around how we really promote economic development. We think that through the funding and also beginning to draw private sector investments into the place really becomes very critical for us to drive the economic growth of this country. And that's why we particularly focusing on energy as a catalyst towards industrialization, as a catalyst towards economic development as such. And then we're also focusing on water as a critical commodity, because without water, as we say, water is life. We think that it's important for us to really get involved in ensuring that there is adequate access to water, especially dealing with bulk water. And that's basically one area that we looked at. And the other area that we think is also quite very crucial, that's why DBSA is driving more the approach around the green hydrogen, beginning to look at hydrogen initiatives and in that instance. And I think that's our quest of beginning to say we really need to assist the country in also arriving at a net zero targets that we really want to deal with.
And in dealing with climate change, I mean, we've just seen from the weekend those thunderstorms that wreaked havoc in some municipalities in KwaZulu Natal. When it comes to your response in terms of dealing with municipalities who have to pick up the pieces, what role will you be playing as a DBSA? I also know that you've come up with some sort of approach to how to assist municipalities when faced with various challenges, particularly caused by climate change.
Climate change is a very, very serious threat to the livelihoods, also a very serious threat to human life. And as a result, the DBSA has got a very deliberate focus around. Also, in terms of our funding, we're looking at climate resilient infrastructure, beginning to make sure that whichever projects that we're really supporting really promote, climate focus. And I think in terms of the disasters that particularly we're seeing due to this climate, changes, we have taken also another approach of supporting especially those communities through those municipalities that has been hit hard by floods and so on. So we have put in resources. I remember last year we put close to 140 million rands to then support in the construction of houses. In case then we have looked at around 200 houses. We also then began to look at how we rehabilitate the water infrastructure in that particular space. So we keep on doing this thing as a result of ensuring that we also sustain those communities at the same time as we're really reconstructing the infrastructure at a particular space. So we've taken the deliberate approach to that effect.
And staying with communities, what ideas here, were discussed in this conference or engagement which took place last week in terms of, plans to try and uplift various communities? I know you've just spoken about building homes for those who lost their houses in the floods in KwaZulu Natal. What more will you be doing, throughout the country?
One thing for sure, which is very crucial, is that we take it from a principle that development without communities is not a development. So, from our side, we have embedded the whole issue around social facilitation, around how we really we implement the projects, where we really engage. And so we need to really engage with communities that in the designs that we make or in the infrastructure rollout, we need to embrace them as part of our system. And that is actually assisting a lot in terms of beginning to avoid giving people what they don't want, but beginning to design in accordance to the inputs of the people, because at the end of the day they are the users of those facilities or infrastructure that we're going to create. And in that regard, we walk through them and also beginning to ensure that we show them the benefits of the jobs that are going to be derived, as well as the kind of the economic benefits that particular infrastructure is going to bring in their own communities. So part of what we've embedded in our approach is that community involvement becomes a fundamental project implementation issue that we're taking along for that matter.
Chuene, thank you so much for your contribution. That is Chuene Ramphele. He is the Group Executive Infrastructure Delivery Division from DBSA.